Claude Code versus Cursor on the same repo task. Winner inspected, not vibed. My answer is simple. Claude Code wins when the job rewards audit trail, terminal control, and disciplined context. Cursor wins when raw IDE iteration speed matters more than receipts. That is the thesis, and I tested it on one bug fix from the same starting commit, with the same prompt, the same failing tests, and a scorecard. Not vibes. Not, this one felt smarter. If you searched for Claude Code versus Cursor comparison, Claude Code versus Cursor benchmark, or just which one should I use for real work, this is the practical version. The task is specific. Fix a pagination bug in a node service where filtered results lose query parameters across page links, add the missing regression coverage, and keep the change set tight. Both tools start from the same base commit. I score them on 4 things: context handling, diff quality, test pass rate, and cost or time to completion. If a tool passes tests by touching half the repo, that is not a win. If it feels fast, but I cannot reconstruct what happened from logs and diffs, that is also not a win. Theo-style tooling teardowns are useful for first impressions. This is stricter than that. Receipts decide it. Before either run, I verify the eval is clean. Same base commit, same failing test, same prompt text. This matters because I would not choose between them using a greenfield toy app with no tests, no Git history, and no measurable scorecard. That is how people end up declaring a winner based on autocomplete charisma. I would reject that in code review. The pre-run receipt is the important one. Identical red tests before Claude Code, identical red tests before Cursor. If that is not true, the comparison is already contaminated. The saved prompt log also matters because agent mode without a transcript is just marketing with extra steps. Claude Code goes first. Same task prompt, terminal first workflow, full log saved. This is where its main advantage shows up immediately. Better audit trail, stronger terminal workflow, less hand-wavy agent behavior. That is my ranked take, and yes, I prefer Claude Code over Cursor for repo surgery because I can see the reasoning path through commands, file reads, retries, and tests without guessing what the editor quietly did for me. The run is not perfect, though. Claude Code initially overreads the pagination helper and misses the serializer that actually strips the query params. It corrects on retry after seeing the failing assertion. That retry is in the saved log, which is exactly why the log matters. The resulting Claude diff is disciplined. It touches the pagination formatter, one request utility, and the regression test. Changed file count stays low, which matters for reviewability. The code style also stays close to the repo instead of inventing a side abstraction because the model got bored. This is where Claude Code versus Cursor tutorial often goes wrong online. People praise output without checking whether the diff respects local patterns. In my run, Claude's diff is the cleaner one. The concrete failure. It adds a slightly verbose helper wrapper I would probably inline by hand. Annoying, but not risky. On context handling, it also does the better job of staying inside the bug boundary instead of wandering into unrelated cleanup. And the receipt that matters most. Tests go from red to green on the Claude branch. Same failing test first, then passing output after the fix. The commit is saved off the same base commit, with diff stats and changed file count visible. That answers one of the common PAA questions directly. Is Claude Code better than Cursor for real coding work? For real coding work with tests, history, and a bug boundary, often yes. Especially when I care about reconstructing exactly why the tool changed what it changed. It also answers, does Claude Code work better in terminal than Cursor in the IDE? My answer is yes for auditable bug fixing, because terminal logs are first-class evidence, not an afterthought. Now the Cursor run, same base commit, same prompt, matched evidence. Cursor's strength is obvious, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. It is faster inside the editor. Jumping between the broken code, the test, and the call sites feels efficient. If your search was Claude Code in Cursor versus Terminal, that is the real split. Cursor keeps your eyes in one place. Claude Code makes the workflow more explicit. Cursor also feels better for a developer who already lives in the IDE and wants short edit, run, edit loops. For beginners, that matters. If someone asks me which to start with first, I say Cursor is the easier first tool because the surface area is familiar. But this is where IDE convenience gets overcredited. Cursor fixes the bug, but the diff is wider. It touches an extra shared utility and reformats a nearby block that had nothing to do with the failing test. That is not catastrophic. It is just expensive in review. I care because wider diffs increase rollback friction and make blame noisier later. The concrete failure for Cursor is not that it fails the task. It is that it is easier to drift into "while I'm here" edits, because the editor makes iteration friction low. If you use agent mode carelessly, that drift gets worse. So on which handles repo context and agent mode better, my answer is Claude Code by a margin, because its workflow nudges tighter scope. Cursor also gets the test to green, so this is not a story where one tool faceplants. Both complete the bug fix. The difference is how they get there, how much they touch, and how easy it is to audit the path afterward. Cost is also nuanced. Is Claude Code cheaper than Cursor on the same task? Not automatically. In my run, Claude spends more time reasoning in the terminal, but wastes less on extra edits. Cursor finishes the interactive part faster, but produces a slightly costlier review and cleanup path. That is why Claude Code versus Cursor cost is the wrong question by itself. The real cost is model usage plus your own review time plus rollback risk. Here is the scorecard. Context handling, Claude 5, Cursor 4. Diff quality, Claude 5, Cursor 3. Test pass rate, both 5, because both end green from the same red baseline. Cost and time to completion, Cursor 4, Claude 3, because Cursor is quicker in the editor even though its review tail is longer. Final, Claude 18, Cursor 16. The rollback notes matter too. Claude's rollback is straightforward because the touched files stay close to the bug. Cursor's is still manageable, just noisier. If you wanted a Claude Code versus Cursor benchmark, this is the version I trust. Same task, same base, same tests, published scorecard, and one concrete failure logged for each tool. A few direct answers, since people also ask the same 5 questions every time. Is Claude Code better than Cursor for real coding work? If the repo has tests, history, and enough complexity that auditability matters, yes, I prefer it. Should beginners use Claude Code or Cursor first? Cursor first, because the IDE reduces setup friction and teaches the loop faster. Is Claude Code cheaper? Sometimes on cleanup adjusted cost, not always on raw usage. Does Claude Code work better in terminal than Cursor in the IDE? Yes, when you care about receipts. Which handles repo context and agent mode better? Claude, because the terminal first flow makes context boundaries and retries more visible. Indie Dev Dan talks about the big 3: context, prompt, model. This comparison is mostly about context discipline. So the verdict: Claude Code wins this repo task. Not because it is magically smarter, and not because terminal windows are morally superior. It wins because the task rewards auditable reasoning, tighter scope, and cleaner diffs. Cursor still wins under exact conditions. When I am doing rapid IDE-native iteration, when the repo is smaller, when I expect several tiny exploratory edits, or when the user is a beginner who needs the lowest friction path to a working loop. I would also pick Cursor for fast local refactors where human review is immediate and the cost of extra file churn is low. I would not pick either tool based on a toy app benchmark with no tests. That proves almost nothing. Recap: same task, same base commit, same failing tests, same prompt. Claude Code wins on context handling and diff quality. Cursor wins on raw IDE speed. Both pass the task, which is why the scorecard matters more than the mood. Receipts in the description. Pre-run and post-run test output. Both same base commits with diff stats, both saved prompt logs, and the final scorecard CSV. If you want more agent evals like this, pick another tool matchup or workflow claim, and I'll test it the same way.